Hey friends, it's Becky McCoy, and this is Sucker Punched. Hey friends, I am really excited about this mental health series. It's definitely been a long time in the making, ever since I started this podcast back when it was Stories of Unfolding Grace. I got lots of emails asking for more episodes on different mental health issues. So my team and I have spent the last couple months putting this together, and I'm really excited to share it with you. If you just realized that the podcast's name changed and you are confused and not sure you're in the right place, you're in the right place. But if you want to know more about why the name changed from Stories of Unfolding Grace to Sucker Punched, just go back a couple episodes and I explain the whole thing. So, why are we even talking about mental health? Like, why is it necessary? Are we kind of beating a dead horse? Like, if you're kind of wondering, like, what is the big deal? Well, there are two major reasons. The first is that I really want to create a safe place for people to kind of think and talk about different mental health issues. And that has started in, I host a group called Resilient on Facebook, and it's for women who are living with anxiety and depression. So if that's you and you feel like you need some friends who get it, come join us. The group is called Resilient. So we're creating a safe place, and one of the main goals of the safe place is to free people from the shame that comes with mental illness. And that's because we culturally, for certain in the United States, but I think this is true in all of the more wealthy countries in the world. Mental illness has been something that is just looked down upon as like you can't get your life together, or what's wrong with you, or why can't you figure this out? And so there's so much shame associated with it. And I'm hoping that these stories that we'll be sharing from lots of different women will help to kind of chip away at that shame and realize that it really isn't anything to be ashamed about at all. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later in this episode. Another reason to have this series is so that we can just talk openly and honestly about what it's like to really live with mental illness. And I'm not afraid of using the term mental illness. It kind of has some connotations. Maybe you just think of the extreme, like people having to live inpatient forever, or movies with crazy psychopath killers, or but mental illness is something that there's an entire spectrum of. Some people, it doesn't affect them every day, and some people it's completely debilitating. And so let's just create this dialogue of the reality of living with mental illness. So we've actually already had 5 episodes on the podcast about different aspects of mental illness. So if you want to go back and listen to those, in addition to this whole series, in the first episode, I talked about my struggles with anxiety and depression. And a lot of my own experience it's very like nuanced. Mental illness is not black and white, because so for me, I've always had anxiety and I've always struggled with depression, but because of several different things that have happened in my life, I had PTSD and grief thrown in the mix. So anxiety, depression, PTSD, and grief all together, like you can't say like, oh, well, I'm feeling sad today because of my grief, or oh, I'm having a hard time getting my act together because I'm depressed. Like you can't separate them. They all interact and they all affect one another. Um, so if you've ever thought like I should be able to predict how I react to situations or how I handle life with my mental illness, just throw that out the window because that's not how it works. And also that, no two people handle it the same way. No two people have the same severity of any mental illness. And even if they did, they probably have different triggers and experience it differently. So I think that's one of the most difficult things when we're talking about mental illness is um, it's not like, oh, you broke your femur. Oh, I broke my femur right there too. Wasn't it terrible that we had to have like a full leg cast for, 6 to 12 weeks? Or, the experience is not going to be the same when you have the same diagnosis. And we'll talk about that a little more later in the episode. So, other episodes where we've discussed mental illness, in episode 7, we talked about Heather Bender. I talked with Heather Bender, and she went through, she experienced some pretty severe trauma and went into depression as a result of that. And Heather's a friend of mine, and I know that she struggles with depression generally. But this traumatic event really triggered her depression more severely than one of her regular depressive episodes. Now, in episode 13, Laura Fleetwood talks about her struggle with anxiety and how she ignored all of the kind of warning signs that she was dealing with anxiety, and she ended up having a pretty significant breakdown. She didn't have to go inpatient, but it was it was pretty intense, and she had to go through counseling just about every day for a long time and really work through a lot of stuff. And she continues to talk about her experience. She's a writer as well, and really just talks about freeing yourself from all those ridiculous expectations you have, and just really living out from under the burden of those expectations. In episode 22, Christina Herr discusses what it was like growing up with a mom with a mental illness. So having a parent really struggling with a lot of mental illness issues when you're just a child, and how that affected her and her relationship with her mom. And now that she's a parent, kind of like thinking through that. And then in episode 35, Kelli Estes talked about addiction and just what it was really like to be addicted to prescription painkillers and be a nurse, and just kind of what it took for her to get clean, and what it's really like to be addicted to something. That episode was really I feel like really poignant, especially with the opioid epidemic in our country, in the United States, which starts off in most people as a prescription drug addiction, and then as their bodies get used to that, they need something stronger, which then spills over into opioids. And I don't know, that episode just really struck a chord with me. And I'm really thankful for all of these women who have been so open and honest about their experiences, and just really helped to start a discussion. So if you want to join us in the group Resilient, if you struggle with anxiety and depression, please join us. It's a closed group just for women. So you find the group on Facebook and you request to be added. and then I'll add you, and yeah, it's safe. Nobody outside of the group can see any of our posts. So that's been really wonderful. Also, you can find me on Facebook at Becky L. McCoy. But I've also started this group called Brave Together, and that's a place where we can really have more discussion about the podcast episodes and really get involved in each other's journeys, whether it be with mental illness or just life, whatever. So, yeah, I'm just excited to have more and more places to get to know you and to share ideas and learn and grow together. One of the things that people say to me most often when they hear my story about being widowed while I was pregnant or losing my dad 8 hours after my son was born, both of my pregnancies being pretty traumatic experiences emotionally, and just all the other things that I've dealt with, is that, I could never be that brave. And I always want to grab people and give them a giant hug, because it's just not true. Being brave is a choice. It's not this inherent superpower. So I really want you to be encouraged and maybe kind of open your mind to the idea that you can be brave. So I created a quiz. You go to beckylmccoy.com/quiz. And you can find out what kind of brave you are right now. And then you can sign up for my free course. It's just a sweet little 5-day video course that comes straight to your email. You don't even have to do anything. And it will kind of give you some tips and guide you along the way of becoming more brave in your life and just kind of the habits of brave people. So I want you to know that you're already brave, and you can find out how brave you are in the quiz, and then you can practice your brave skills with the free course. Another thing, if you could just take a minute, it would be super helpful if you would subscribe and rate and review the podcast. Subscribing is, while it's great for me to kind of keep track of how many people are listening, and that helps when I'm looking for sponsors for things, or as I'm working on writing a book and finding a publisher, having the data and the numbers is really helpful. But mostly it's helpful for you, because when you subscribe to a podcast, the new episodes just show up automatically in whatever podcast app you use. So rating and reviewing. You always hear people asking to rate and review their podcast. And I know that for many of us, we go and we try to do it because we want to be really helpful, and then we realize that we have no idea how to do it. And so here's part of the problem. If you use the Apple Podcast app, which is what I use because it's just already on my phone and that's easy, it's not intuitive the way they have it set up to rate and review. So I'm going to go through it with you right now and help you know how to rate and review a podcast. So if you pull out your phone or your iPad or whatever you use, I think it actually works the same if you're listening through iTunes on a computer, and you open up the podcast app or you open up iTunes. Here's the trick. You have to go to the search. Don't go to your podcasts where all the ones that you listen to are listed. You have to search for the name. So I'm going to leave a review for Annie Downs' That Sounds Fun podcast, because I haven't, and that's terrible. And you should actually listen to this podcast because it's awesome. So you search, I searched That Sounds Fun with Annie F. Downs, and I clicked on the podcast. So it shows up, and on there are 3 little things. It says details, reviews, related. it automatically opens up on the details. So it shows you the description, it shows you the latest episodes, and it shows you whether or not you're subscribed or not. So you're going to click on that middle thing next to details. It says reviews. And it says ratings and reviews. It shows all the stars. And then underneath it shows everyone's reviews. And it's right in between the stars and everyone's reviews. It says write a review. So you click on write a review. You can put in 5 stars. You can put in however many stars you would like to put in. I'm going to give Annie's 5 stars because she's awesome. And you have to title your review. It can just be like Becky from Connecticut, or it can be this is my favorite podcast, or, you know, it can be whatever you want, but you have to have a title. And then the review is optional, but it's really helpful when other people are looking to listen to a new podcast. I like to read the reviews, and it kind of helps to give you an idea of the tone and the substance content of a podcast without actually having to listen to any of the episodes. So that's how you rate and review a podcast through the Apple Podcasts app. I have no clue how you do it on any other app. I'm going to guess it's much more intuitive. But if you're not sure, you can just ask the Google, and I'm sure it will tell you because the Google knows everything. But for me, it's really helpful if you rate and review, not because I want to know like what you think of the podcast as much as the more, which I do. I'm always really encouraged when I see your reviews and that these messages are really resonating with you. But really, it helps the algorithms that iTunes and everything uses. So, you know, the better scores you're getting, or the more ratings and reviews you're getting, if you're getting them regularly and a lot of them, iTunes will boost your visibility, so you'll be more visible to people who are looking to listen to new podcasts. So it really is really, really helpful when you do that. So thank you in advance. I hope the little tutorial is helpful. The last thing is I have a gift for you on my website. Sometimes when life is really hard, all the time when life is really hard, I completely lose perspective, and every hard thing feels like the hardest thing that's ever happened. So I put my heads together. I only have one head. You can look at my headshot. There's only one head. I put my head together with other heads of other people who have lived through really difficult things, and we came up with these list of things that we always want to remember when life is really hard. And it's called 3 Truths and a Lie for When Life is Ridiculously Hard. It's free. It's my gift for you. You go to beckylmccoy.com/3truths. So beckylmccoy.com/3truths. And it'll take you right to the thing. You put in your email address, and I will send you that 3 Truths and a Lie for When Life is Ridiculously Hard. And my favorite thing about it is that it's formatted already for 8.5 by 11 paper. So you just print it out, you put it on your fridge, you tape it on your mirror, you put it wherever you need to see it to remember that you can get through this hard thing. And here are the things that you should just constantly remind yourself of to keep perspective and keep being brave through whatever it is that you're wrestling through. So let's talk a little bit about what is mental health and mental illness. So when my husband Keith was in med school, they spend all of the first year of med school talking about health. So they're talking about when the body is functioning as it should be, what is it like? What's going on in the body? Second year of med school, they talk about illness, and illness is basically the absence of health. So something is going wrong in the body. So mental illness. Mental illness is actually just a type of physical illness because your brain is a physical part of your body, and mental illness is when something is amiss with your brain. It is really, I think it's really hard for us to kind of wrap our heads around that sometimes because mental illness is very rarely something that you can see or experience in someone else unless they're outwardly showing signs or symptoms or talking about it. And so in the past, it's been common for people to assume that mental illness is really you just making something up for attention or being kind of a kindred spirit to a hypochondriac. And that is just extreme emotion as opposed to an actual form of illness. We actually know very little about our brain, like compared to all the things our brains are capable of. Neuroscientists are really still just kind of on the forefront of learning all about it. And so while we've learned a lot about mental illnesses and neurology and all of this, so much of it is still a mystery, there are, it's why did certain meds work really well for someone and are a disaster for other people? We just don't know. Like, it's all kind of experimental, which is a little bit scary, but it's also amazing because it just goes to prove that we just have so much to learn. And so if we think that we 100% understand anything about mental illness or our brains, that's a moment to kind of sit back and check ourselves, because that's probably not the case. So there are three things that when I'm explaining anxiety and depression or mental illness to someone, there are three things that mental illness is not. Mental illness is not a faith issue. Anxiety and depression is what I speak about most, and I will use examples of most because that's what I struggle with, and I can't even begin to speak to anyone else's experience. But it's not a faith issue. Anxiety, it really bugs me. And it makes me a little nervous to like send this out into the internet world. But it really bugs me when someone is preaching and they use the word anxiety instead of worry. There is a verse in the Bible that says, cast all your anxiety on him, for he cares for you. Well, if you go back and look at the original language and the original intent of the verse, it means give all the things that you're worrying about to God. It does not mean like hand over your mental illness and you will be cured and fixed. Of course, there's going to be, no. I don't know if you could just hear, but the phone rang and then the answering machine went on, but the person hung up. Anyways, so, really the verse is saying like, give what you're worried about to God because he cares for you and he wants to help you. It's not saying stop having anxiety because that means you don't believe God is in control. Like, no, it's something completely different. It's apples and oranges. It's not apples and oranges. It's like apples and cows, right? It's just so unrelated and different. Now, certainly part of my journey with anxiety is learning to trust that God is still God, even when my anxiety is so bad that I feel like God must not exist. Right? That's how faith plays into my journey with mental illness. But it's not because if I had more faith, I wouldn't have anxiety, if that makes sense. I was just going to say something else. Man, I had a great point. But anyways, so anxiety and worry are not the same thing. So, if I'm just talking to you in person and I'm really worried and stressed about something, I'm going to say worried or stressed. I'm never going to say I'm really anxious about Caleb starting school, because I'm not. I'm not going to have a panic attack about Caleb starting school. And so if you are someone who does not struggle with anxiety, as someone who does, I really appreciate it when you kind of consider your language a little bit. And you don't say like, I'm really anxious about this, that, or the other. No, maybe you are. Maybe, the word anxious kind of gets a little blurry and gray and runs over like into the worry camp or the anxiety camp. But just knowing that my experience with anxiety, or people who struggle with anxiety as a mental illness, is not the same as when you feel stressed or worried. And maybe you don't believe me, because there are plenty of people who don't and still say, like, just calm down, just go relax and you'll feel fine. Like, my anxiety has nothing. I could be very relaxed and still be struggling with anxiety. They're not the same. And then there's this parallel thing where we're always talking about when we're sad about something, we're depressed, but it's not the same thing. Sadness is a very healthy emotion that we feel when we're disappointed in something, or when we've lost something or someone. And sadness is real, and sadness is healthy, and sadness is normal. And if you've never experienced sadness, you should probably go see a counselor right away, because you're probably repressing something. But depression, you can feel sad and be depressed, but they are not the same thing. Depression it's kind of like your brain and your body shut down. When it gets extreme, you're just not able to function. No matter how long you sleep, you don't feel rested. You have no appetite. You kind of feel no emotions whatsoever. So maybe that's the best thing that I can tell you to remember if you do not struggle with mental illness and you want to understand it better, is that mental illness is different than emotions. Emotions, worry, fear, sadness, happiness, joy, like all of these things are emotions, and they are all healthy, and we are meant to experience them all. But mental illness is very different. So, like, anxiety is an inappropriate fight or flight response. It means that you are experiencing a tremendous amount of fear towards something that you have no reason to fear it. So those are just kind of some ways that I like to help people kind of think through, like, their own experience with anxiety and depression, or learning to help a spouse or a friend, or their children. So just remembering that mental illness is different than extreme emotions, that it's an actual physical issue because your brain is a physical part of your body, and that no two people experience them the same. So, if somebody tells you I'm really struggling with anxiety or depression, or my bipolar is flaring up, you could often, our instinct is to want to connect with that person, be like, oh yeah, my sister-in-law or my mom or my dad or my cousin or, whoever, struggles with that too. And while that's nice to be reminded that other people struggle too, chances are our experiences aren't the same. So it's really hard. I know that it's really hard to talk about because there's so much nuance, because no two people's experiences are the same. But here is our attempt to talk about it anyways. And if we fumble through it, that is fine, because at least we're talking about it, right? So here are the ways that I live with mental illness. The first thing is I kind of change my perspective on it. I like to call it my pet monster. Um, it's kind of like the monster that lives under my bed or in my closet, but it's also a little bit domesticated because I kind of understand what triggers it, and I understand what helps it, and I understand what kind of like keeps it tame and domesticated as opposed to letting it get feral. And yeah, so it kind of helps me to personify my anxiety and depression because I am not my anxiety and depression. It does not define me. It is not who I am. It's just something that I live with. So I call it my pet monster. Um, the ways that I have learned to cope and learned to deal with it are a few different things. I really always encourage people to look at like the natural ways of dealing with it through exercise, through eating well, and what you know will fuel your body, getting enough sleep. I've used essential oils a lot. You know, those are some of the more natural things, and maybe if you have a very mild form of anxiety or depression, that'll help you. Of course, I'm not a doctor or anything, so you know, this is not like medical advice. This is just me sharing my experience. But I find that stuff isn't quite enough. My anxiety is too severe, and when I have depression episodes, they get far too severe, far too fast for just the like natural habitual things to work. So I know that I will be on and off of medication for probably the rest of my life, if not just on it for the rest of my life. There have been moments in life where I have not needed vitamin Z, as we call Zoloft in my family. Um, but more often than not, I'm on it because I feel myself when I'm on it. When I'm not on my medication, I can't think straight. I have a really pessimistic view of the world. Everything, just all of life kind of seems cloudy. Uh, and then when I get back on the meds, like I kind of just feel myself again. I feel grounded again. Without medication, I kind of feel like I could float away at any moment. That there's nothing kind of keeping me um, keeping me grounded. The other huge thing is counseling. I cannot recommend enough, whether you're dealing with a mental illness or just a really hard time in life, or you've had traumatic things happen to you in the past. Counseling is the best because you're sitting there with someone who is emotionally objective to your situation and who is trained to know what is healthy and normal and what is not. And you may feel like your whole world is crumbling down around you, and they will help you understand what truly is crumbling down and what is not working, but what is working and what you're doing well and what is normal. Like if you just feel like you cannot get anything done, but they're like, well, you just lost your job 2 months ago. Like, you might be dealing with depression, but you're certainly grieving, and that's normal and healthy. And they can just kind of help you gain some perspective on what you're dealing with. So for me, it's really helpful to be in counseling, even when I'm taking meds. Just to kind of check in and say, like, wow, I haven't had any panic attacks in the last 6 months. Like, hooray, that's awesome. Let's look back to a year ago. I was not doing this well a year ago. What have I done to work to this point? And it's not to say that I'm never going to have bad days, months, years, decades, you know, again, but to have that person who's been on the journey with you to celebrate and who can really, um, kind of keep you in line. Like I was really resisting going back on medication, and my counselor was finally like, you know what, I think you just need something to take the edge off so that you can really work through what we're trying to accomplish right now. And then maybe once we've worked through it, you'll be well enough to go off of the medication for a while again. And so just somebody who knows you and your situation and can give you some truly helpful and professional feedback on what you're thinking about and how you're doing. Now, I say all of this knowing that sometimes it takes trying quite a few counselors to find somebody that you really click with. And that is so hard, and that is so frustrating and discouraging. You are not alone in that if you feel that way, but I promise you that taking the time and pushing yourself to try somebody and keep trying until you find someone that you really click with is so worth the time. Going along with counseling, if you really want to get better in your mental illness, and this actually goes with kind of like everyone, whether or not you deal with mental illness, you really need to talk openly about your experience with people, whether it be your family and friends. Like, if I'm feeling really anxious on a certain day and my kids are being really rough, I know that there are people that I can text and be like, today is a bad anxiety day. The kids are driving me crazy. I don't need you to come over, but I just need you to know. Because when we try and hide it and suck it up and just deal with it, it all gets worse. So the more we talk openly about it, the more it relieves the pressure of having to deal with it on our own, and the more it helps our loved ones to know how to help us too. The last thing that has helped me tremendously in dealing with anxiety, depression, other mental illness related things is knowing more about myself. So I am a huge nerd when it comes to like personality profiling stuff. So the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies. What are the other ones that I talk about all the time? Strengths Finder. Oh, that's my favorite. Doing all of these different things has helped me to understand who I am at my core without my anxiety and depression. So if I am acting in a certain way or trying to make a decision in a certain way and getting really frustrated, I can say like, oh, wait a second. This is not the way that I actually am naturally wired to handle this. This must be my anxiety interfering. And it helps me to keep who I am and who my pet monster, anxiety and depression, are separate things. And that really helps me a lot to keep from getting too discouraged as I live with anxiety and depression. And actually, if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, how doing these different personality profiles, they're not like just quizzes for fun. They're actually really useful tools. I wasn't even going to announce this till next week, but I'm going to tell you now because I just can't wait. I am hosting a virtual retreat on September 9th. So a virtual retreat is like a conference or a retreat, but it's all online. So you get to just sit in your PJs and you get to learn from some really amazing and incredible women who they want to help you be a better version of yourself. Like we buy courses or books or better workout clothes or sign up for an exercise app or whatever, and we just never follow through. And so here's a way for us all to sit down together from 10 to 2 on Saturday, September 9th, and just take step forwards in developing who we are and growing into ourselves and becoming better versions of ourselves. But we get to like be in our PJs. You could like stay in bed and watch it, right? That's awesome. I'm just so excited. So go to beckylmccoy.com/retreat and you can sign up and get more information on that. And so I'm going to do a whole session on personality profiling and how I use it in my regular day-to-day life. More than just really cool info, but like really practical. So next week we'll start the interview part of this series on mental illness, and I just wanted to share with you kind of what we're going to be talking about. So as I talk with each guest, I'm going to have them explain their diagnosis and their symptoms and how their experience is similar and different to other people. I'm going to have them talk about the point where they realized that they were actually dealing with an illness, not just like exhaustion or stress or worry or right, where it was actually something significant. What seeking help looked like for them. If they've come to feel like they understand the triggers and like, so the dark place is like when you have a really severe episode. So if they understand what triggers the dark place, what they need to do when they start going towards the dark place, and how they feel that their disorder, their illness has impacted their life and their relationships. These conversations are really, really great. I am so thankful to all of these women for just being so candid and honest. And I think that you're really going to be impacted and encouraged by these conversations. We're going to talk about I'm talking with a friend whose spouse has depression, talking with a woman whose son died from suicide. We're going to talk about postpartum depression, OCD, bipolar, anxiety, depression. We're really going to cover a lot of different things. And, this is not, if you want like the clinical discussion or conversation on all of these, this is not like, I'm sure there are podcasts or whatnot, certainly a lot of books on all of that. But we're just going to talk through the stories, because stories are such a great way for us to learn and grow and share and support and encourage one another. So that's it for the intro. I really hope that you are as excited as I am about all of this. I hope that you are able to join us on September 9th for the virtual retreat. And I'll be sharing more about that over the next few weeks in the next episodes. Before I say goodbye, I would love to let you know how we can stay in touch. I'm on all of social media at Becky L. McCoy. You can join me in my new Facebook group called Brave Together. You can find me in Resilient, the Facebook group for women who struggle with anxiety and depression. You can read more about me on my blog, beckylmccoy.com. My story is at beckylmccoy.com/about. And if you want to get updated on the things that I'm thinking about, on information on the retreat or future events, just sign up for my email list. You can do that if you take the quiz or sign up for the video course or get the 3 Truths thing. But if you don't want any of that and you just want to be updated with the things that I have going on, you just go to beckylmccoy.com/email. If that doesn't work, let me know. I just changed a whole bunch of stuff about the website, but that should work. All right, that's it for this week. I look forward to sharing one of our mental illness stories with you next week. I hope you are enjoying the waning moments of summer if you're at home on summer vacation, or you are enjoying summer after work or on the weekends. I hope you have some great adventures planned, and I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.